Okay.
Speaking of completely made-up lore that has no presence within the actual series that it's taken
You're
from.
roboting out a little bit, but
Okay, he's back already.
That's fine. That's fine. Speaking of that,
Mhm.
I watched the Star Trek Discovery thing lately.
Ooh, yeah.
yeah, you've had some thoughts, haven't you?
Pat is not here, so there's not much to say about it. I'm sure that you guys haven't.
I watched the
Have you
first
seen it?
I watched the first episode, but that's
Okay.
it.
That's good enough, I guess.
Yeah.
Because
I didn't really want to, because then a lot of people are like, man, it's shit. So I was like, I don't know if I want to watch it.
Yeah. There's been a lot of politics behind it.
Behind the creation of it, yeah.
Yeah,
production
that too.
Side. Yeah, okay.
There is a big, long story to go into that I'm not going to go into.
Okay.
But the gist of it is that CBS wanted a show that's financially successful.
Okay.
The guy in charge of it famously does not like science fiction and did not know the difference between Star Trek and Star Wars. And there's like an infamous story of him getting upset and wanting to know where his money was for all these Star Wars movies that was coming out. It's like, don't we own something in that? No, sir.
Wow.
No, sir. So he's detached from reality as far as this goes. And there's also been politics in regards to... There's probably numerous things that you guys can think of in regards to video games that are sort of like this.
Okay.
A new thing comes out, has nothing to do with the original source material, takes it in a completely different direction, is not what people wanted in the first place, is someone else's pet project that they're just kind of writing in the process. But on one hand, you have fans that are like, I hate this, I will not support it, blah, blah, blah. And then on the other hand, you have fans that are like, you need to get over yourself, support the series, just trust them, and, it's modern day, it's 2017,
Yeah.
Just those two sides. Like, that happens all the time with all sorts of things.
Sure.
Right.
And it's happening with this too. So, just to synopsize, I'm not going to go too much into it, but this version of Star Trek Discovery has pretty much nothing to do with Star Trek.
I got that feeling after the first episode because it felt very un-Star Trek-y. The only thing I can't say about it is like whether Enterprise was the same, because I never watched a single episode of Enterprise.
The final season of Enterprise actually turned around a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
That's because Braga and Berman actually were basically stripped of their ability to write episodes for it. So new people came in, but they weren't able to rescue it before it died, unfortunately.
Okay, because Braga was like just wrote so much stuff in all of the previous series, so I'm surprised.
That's why they were there, yeah.
Okay.
Berman and Braga were Braga was the main writer for most of the later half of TNG and much of Voyager and Enterprise, pretty much exclusively Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
So most people will point to them as far as that, but that's a whole other story. But back to Discovery for a moment. With Discovery, most people are nitpicking like, this doesn't look right, like the Klingons' weird heads or whatever.
They redesigned Klingons again.
Yeah,
what did they
pointing
change?
to like...
It's just completely different now.
Well, do you know what Klingons look like?
I know what Klingons look like.
Like, imagine Worf, right?
I've seen
these,
lots of Star Trek. I just haven't seen all of it.
Yeah, this one, none of them have hair.
Okay.
And their heads sort of arch backwards, sort of like a xenomorph head does.
Did they change the forehead design?
A little, yeah. It's a little bit smoother now, and it still has sort of ridges, but they're really fucked up looking.
So are they
this is the fourth version of Klingons?
Are races then treated like fucking Gundams, where little details come in and go depending on the designer? And then we get the version Ka, and then Hajime Katoki does his retake.
Got tribal tattoos all over him.
Fucking get a little bit more lines there.
I'm sure Play can back this up, but the only time they ever mention anything about this is like when TNG starts, they say there's some sort of thing where they say, oh yeah, Klingons went through a change, we evolved or something. Yeah,
here's the story, okay, because this is half of it is actual canon, half of it is politics. Okay, so in the original series they were just like white guys that had really awful looking paint sprayed on their faces.
Yeah, they had bad suntans.
They were blackface boys, basically, is what they
basically
were. It was pretty bad. So whenever they turned around to TNG, and
yes,
during the 1980s, this was a big how do you do about this shit too.
Yeah.
People were upset, well, these aren't Klingon, that sort of thing too.
Yeah.
But it happened once. They have changed one time ever.
Yeah.
And it was basically just an upgrade because, well, we couldn't do this stuff in the original series. Now we have money, so now we can. And since then, they've looked pretty much exactly the same.
Right.
There's a little bit of difference.
I do remember that jump, yeah.
Yeah, but that's been it. So whenever people are complaining about the Klingons getting redesigned, lots of people are saying, well, they got redesigned TNG with the little smug little faces that they get whenever they want to be right.
Sure.
But that only happened that one time.
I mean, it happened in the movie. It happened into the second Star Trek movie, but you didn't see them enough to really...
Yeah, they're slightly different sometimes. It depends on who's making the castings.
Exactly.
But they more or less look almost exactly the same every single time.
Do they redesign like Cardassians as well, or like Eddie?
Yes, actually.
Okay,
a little bit.
So they go through multiple races,
minor things, but usually it's whenever the race first gets introduced. There's like one or two tries, and then they finally settle on something later on.
It's one or two tries.
But they did. They mentioned this in DS9. They go back in time to the Trouble with Tribbles episode of the original series,
right?
And they see the blackface boys, and like O'Brien points, and he's like, "What the fuck is that?" And
interesting.
Worf just has a throwaway line of, "We do not speak of that with outsiders," and that's it.
I didn't know this.
Oh, that's fun. That's pretty fun.
Since neither one of you saw this, in Enterprise, they actually do explain it, and there's a whole plot line of there was the augments happen, like Khan and stuff, right?
Right.
And somehow the Klingons got a hold of this augment stuff and tried to integrate those genes into their genes to make super soldiers.
Okay.
But it fucked them up and ended up incorporating itself with some sort of flu that was happening at the time, and ended up being this sort of widespread plague that went through their entire species and fucked all of them up until they could fix themselves genetically generations later. So that's the explanation. There is no explanation at all for these guys, the ones. Right. But this is all beside the point. This is the whole thing. Like, people are saying, well, this means it's not Trek, this is not Prime, whatever. It definitely is not Prime. It has nothing, like, there's all sorts of major continuity errors in regards to Discovery. It has nothing to do with Prime. It's very clearly modeled to look Kelvin, but also say enough things in the Prime timeline so that it's trying to incorporate both of them. It's in its own thing. Anyone that says otherwise is just trying to fool themselves. But the main problem I have with it is that, ignoring all these dumb things, the core of Star Trek is Gene Roddenberry's original vision that we are presenting a future in which humanity has united with itself.
Yeah.
And like all the ills of the world are gone. Because
there's no disease, no one's homeless.
Yeah, class 1 civilization.
Yes.
Is generally the accepted term.
You would think that today, like in this day and age, with all of our societal problems that are cropping up all over the place, now would be the perfect time for a story like that, where we display humanity as a united front.
As its best form.
Right.
Yes. Like, this is what we should be. You would think that's what we need right now.
Yeah.
But
I guess
the Discovery writers are like, yeah, but that's not realistic, and Gene Roddenberry's a skeleton, so fuck him. We want to write a dark story about how everyone in Star Trek actually hates one another. Like, they've said this.
They're jealous of each other.
Yeah, and like, humans would obviously have conflict. It's not realistic that they would all be united. That's stupid.
Well, there's always some asshole that's in Starfleet.
Well, yeah, but
there is, and that's fine.
But it's never more than like a group of like 12 people.
Like, what I can think of is like they'll go to like some moon base or some base where something happened, like there was a jealous coworker or someone was infected by a virus. There's always it's never like outright like Riker just wants to punch O'Brien in the face for being so stupid. Like, it's never it's never just pure emotion. It's always
it's not inner conflict.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's either some sort of like anger virus spreading. It's always something like that. It's never their fault entirely. So,
and whenever it's a virus, it's usually a sex virus that just makes everyone really horny. It's usually for robots.
It's usually the sex monster episode.
Where everyone gets transformed into spider lords and just starts laying eggs in each other.
Yeah.
That's true. But to me, that's the reason why it's not being Star Trek-y. Mm-hmm. It's just because it's not part of that original vision. It's not fitting the tone of the entire series. So just fuck all the Klingon shit about them being different. Fuck all the, they don't have holograms yet, or, all this other nonsense. I don't care. The main point is that it tonally does not fit with the rest of the series. And that's
to me, when this argument's been had a million times, but like the prequels for the Star Wars movies, I always thought tonally they don't fit at all, because everyone's a weird monk.
No, completely.
And no one has emotions, really.
Yeah. It's very clean, too.
Whereas, at least, The Force Awakens and the new stuff, at least it has that sense of, like, sometimes we don't all get along because we are human, and then we get to grow and get used to people, and now we're friends. Whereas, like, in the prequel movies, it's like no one was friends. No one had any friends.
Like, they tried to do, and especially seeing the Red Letter, the Plinkett reviews, they tried to do like the complete opposite of the original series, but also make them rhyme like poetry, as it were. And I feel as if they remember. Okay, do you remember in, I want to say, The Matrix Revolutions, right? Do you remember that one moment where they're docking into Zion? I want to say
that's like in the start, yeah.
Sure.
And everything goes to the complete opposite of what we've been seeing with the Matrix theme, where they're now looking at a white screen of code, where like you're seeing, instead of black with green trickling kanji or Canon rather
characters
going down, you're seeing a white screen with, I think, is blue code, and and everyone was like looked like sterile and clean and perfect, and it was for like 3 seconds of the fucking movie.
That's why I don't remember it.
Okay. It stood out so strongly, I remember, because it was like, why is everything visually currently like an inverted version of the entire Matrix like movies? And I feel like the Star Wars trilogies were basically like, what if we took that moment and turned it into a whole trilogy?
Expand it, yeah.
That's what it felt like. What if we made round, shiny things instead of blocky, matte things?
Yeah, okay, I can see that.
It's, on one hand, like it's fine to expand your setting. One of the dangers of writing is that if you establish this is our story, and then, especially if it's other writers that are handling it afterwards, you end up with this problem of, the setting becomes a parody of itself. Of, this is the only thing we've ever seen, so everything is just that and nothing else. So the trick is, whenever you want to expand something, you have to incorporate it within the design, or showcase that, yes, it's like this way in one area of space, but if you go over here for a brief moment, you can actually see that it's completely different. But with the prequel, it was just that, nothing else.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. That's where they went wrong with that.
Not to mention that, unlike any other series, I think with Star Wars, when you create a shitty set of prequels, you have so many alt versions of like the same story being done better by other people that exist out there, that like you have nothing but garbage comparisons to be made, when you're like, oh my god, you failed according to like 12 fan authors that officially got their shit published,
video games,
and 8,000 randos on the internet that wrote a better trilogy than you.
Yeah, I mean, you have writers that are slaving over a desk because of their childhood memories, like crying bitch tears because they're like, oh, my Star Wars novel's been so well received, and it's just their life. And then George comes along, and he pins something like a month, and it'll work all right. It's probably poetry
Order
or something.
66.
Yeah, like, it'll be fine. Yeah, I'm sure those can compete with one another.
Yeah.
Everything will be fine.
Well, here it comes.
One has money, one doesn't.
Here comes the Last Jedi.
What was that thing? The sexy Twi'lek, red Twi'lek, they're friends.
Oh, yeah. Her and Darth Maul.
Darth Maul and the
George,
sexy
they
Twi'lek.
lived thousands of years apart. They're friends. Yeah, that's my favorite story.
Well, we can probably still make it happen. No, George. No, we can't make that happen. Well, this is probably your friend. No, George. All right, George.
I like your George voice.
Yeah, well, basically, he gets back in his golf cart.
Yeah.